For 15 years, my father forced me to pretend my mother didn't exist. We ate dinner with an empty chair. We ignored her voice. We let her food grow cold. I thought it was cruelty. I thought it was punishment. Last night, I found his journals and learned the truth. My mother died when I was 3, and the thing I've been talking to all my life was never her. Now, I'm locked in my bedroom. Something is scratching at the door, and if the police don't arrive in time, I'll finally understand why my father was willing to die just to keep me silent.
I need to start from the beginning. I need to try and make sense of it, for my own sake. For as long as I can remember, my life has been governed by one unbreakable rule. It was never spoken aloud, never written down, never explained. It was a rule learned through punishing silence, through the sharp warning glances of my father, through a pressure in the atmosphere so thick you could feel it on your skin. The rule was simple. We do not acknowledge her. She was my mother. She lived in the house with us. She was as solid and real as the dining table we sat at every night, or the stairs I climbed to my bedroom. But to my father, and by extension to me, she was a ghost we had agreed not to see. Every morning, she would be in the kitchen when I came down for breakfast. She'd be at the stove, a floral apron tied around her waist, and she would turn and smile at me. It was always a sad smile, one that never quite reached her eyes. "Good morning, sweetheart," she would say, her voice soft, like rustling leaves. And every morning, I would look right through her, my gaze fixed on the coffee pot on the counter behind her. I'd grab a bowl from the cupboard, pour my own cereal, and sit at the table. My father would already be there, hidden behind his newspaper, a silent monolith. She would sigh, a tiny deflated sound, and place a third plate on the table between us, a plate of scrambled eggs or pancakes, always cooked perfectly, always destined to grow cold. We would eat our breakfast in silence. The only sounds, the scrape of spoons against ceramic and the rustle of my father's paper. The third plate sat there, a testament to our collective delusion, a steaming, fragrant accusation. She would sit in her chair, her hands clasped in her lap, watching us eat, a hopeful, desperate look on her face. Sometimes she would try to start a conversation. "It looks like it might rain today," she'd offer, her voice wavering slightly. "You should take an umbrella to school." My father would just turn a page, the crinkle of the newsprint sharp and dismissive in the quiet room. I would take a large, noisy bite of my cereal, focusing on the crunch, on anything but the sound of her voice. After a while, she would just fall silent, the hope draining from her face, leaving behind that familiar, deep-seated sadness. Dinner was the same. She'd cook a full meal, something that smelled incredible, filling the house with the scent of roasted chicken or baking bread. She'd set 3 places at the table, complete with napkins and silverware. My father and I would sit, and she would serve us, placing food on our plates, her movements graceful and practiced. Then she would sit down, fill her own plate, and try to engage us. "How was your day at work?" she would ask my father. He would grunt, his attention fixed on cutting his meat into precise geometric shapes. "And school? Did you have that big test today?" she would ask me. I would mumble something non-committal, my eyes glued to my plate, shoveling food into my mouth to avoid having to speak. The charade was suffocating. It was a constant, exhausting performance. Every single day was a rehearsal and a live show of pretending this woman, my own mother, did not exist. I grew up in a house with 3 people, but I was raised in a world that only acknowledged 2. For years, I just accepted it. Kids accept the most bizarre circumstances as normal because it's all they've ever known. The sun rises, the sky is blue, and we don't talk to mom. It was just a fact of life. I learned to teen her out, to blur her form at the edges of my vision. She became a piece of the background, like a painting on the wall you no longer notice. But as I got older, moving into my late teens and then my early 20s, the acceptance began to curdle into something else. First, it was confusion, then a deep, gnawing guilt. I started to really look at her. I saw the fine lines of sorrow were etched around her eyes. I saw the way her shoulders slumped when we ignored her, the way she would sometimes touch the back of my father's chair as she passed, a longing for contact that was never returned. I saw a woman who was profoundly, devastatingly lonely, trapped in her own home. My perception of my father shifted too. The silent, stoic man I had once seen as a protector started to look like a tyrant. His rule was strange, cruel. It was a calculated, daily act of emotional violence. What had she done to deserve this? Had she had an affair? Had she done something unforgivable that I was too young to remember? Whatever it was, this punishment seemed monstrously out of proportion. It was a cold, quiet form of torture, and he'd made me his accomplice. The resentment built slowly, the pressure behind my ribs. I started having trouble sleeping. I'd lie in bed and hear the faint sounds of her weeping from their bedroom. It was a soft, muffled sound, the kind of crying you do when you're trying not to wake anyone, and it broke my heart. How could my father lie beside her every night, hear that, and do nothing? What kind of man was he? I began to see his actions as a grotesque form of misogyny, an exertion of absolute control. He had erased her. He had stripped her of her voice, her presence, her very existence within the family she had built, and I had helped him. Every silent breakfast, every ignored question, I was tightening the screws. The breaking point came last Tuesday. It was a miserable, rainy day, the kind that makes the whole world feel gray and damp. I was in the living room trying to read, but the words just swam on the page. She came in and stood by the window, watching the rain streak down the glass. She wasn't trying to talk to me. She was just standing there, looking out at the world she was a part of, but couldn't seem to touch. She started humming, a simple, sad little lullaby. It was a melody that felt vaguely familiar, like a half-remembered dream. I felt a lump form in my throat. I watched her reflection in the dark window pane, a translucent figure against the storm-tossed trees outside. Her shoulders were shaking almost imperceptibly. She was crying again, silently. Something inside me snapped. Years of pent-up guilt, of quiet rebellion, of love for this woman I wasn't allowed to know, all of it came rushing to the surface. It was wrong. This whole thing, this whole life, was fundamentally, grotesquely wrong. I couldn't be a part of it anymore. I waited until I heard my father's car pull out of the driveway for his weekly trip to the hardware store. It was a ritual for him. Every Tuesday evening, a couple of hours to himself. The house fell into a new kind of silence. One that wasn't enforced, but was simply empty. Except it wasn't empty. She was still there. I found her in the kitchen, washing the dishes, her back to me. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I felt like she must be able to hear it. My mouth was dry. It felt like I was about to break a law of physics, like the universe itself might fracture if I spoke. I took a deep breath. "Mom?" The word felt alien in my mouth, heavy and clumsy. She froze. Her hands, submerged in the soapy water, went completely still. The silence that followed was more profound than any I'd ever experienced in that house. It stretched for what felt like an eternity. Slowly, she turned around. Her face was a mask of disbelief. Her eyes, wide and glistening with tears, were locked on mine. She looked at me as if she were seeing a miracle. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She just stared, her expression shifting from shock to a dawning, radiant joy that was so pure it was painful to watch. You can see me?" she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. A single tear traced a path down her cheek. "Oh, my sweet boy, you can finally see me." Her words confused me. They landed strangely, not quite fitting the situation. I took a step closer. "What are you talking about?" I said, my own voice unsteady. "I've always seen you. I see you every day." Her brow furrowed in confusion, but the smile didn't leave her face, as if she couldn't bear to let it go. "But you never looked at me. You never spoke." "Dad," I said, the word tasting like poison. It was him. He told me not to. It was his rule. I was a kid. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. But I'm not a kid anymore, and it's wrong. What he's doing to you is wrong. Understanding washed over her face, followed by a shadow of that old sadness. She reached out and took my hand. Her skin was cold, surprisingly so, like marble that had been left in a cellar, but her grip was firm, real. "Your dad," she began, her voice trailing off. She shook her head. "He's had a hard time. He does what he thinks is best, but it's okay now. It's okay. This can be our secret, can't it?
just between us. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. The relief that flooded me was immense, like I'd been holding my breath my entire life and had been allowed to exhale. We stood there for a long time, just holding hands in the quiet kitchen. She told me how much she loved me, how she had watched me grow up, proud of the man I was becoming. She asked me about school, about my friends, about my life. It was a torrent of questions, years of unspoken love and curiosity pouring out of her. We talked until we heard the sound of my father's car on the gravel driveway. A sudden panic seized me. She squeezed my hand one last time, a conspiratorial smile on her face. "Our secret," she whispered, and then she turned back to the sink, resuming her washing as if nothing had happened. I bolted from the kitchen, my heart racing, and made it to my room just as the front door opened. The rest of the evening passed in the usual suffocating silence, but this time it felt different. It was charged with my secret. When she